Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ZAPP webinar. My name is Justine Chappell. I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for ZAPP. In today's webinar, I'm going to give you a complete look at the Booth Management add-on feature. Last month, we added a new component to this feature, which is the Booth Requests tool. So this tool allows you to collect booth requests from applicants before or after they purchase their booth products. This tool, along with the Booth Map tool, makes up the entirety of the Booth Management add-on. So I'm going to give you a full-length demonstration of these tools to show you how you might want to organize your booth and participants even more. I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Booth Management add-on feature. So again, like I said, this feature involves two tools in one. So first, we've got the booth requests. This is the new tool that has been added. This allows you to collect information from invited applicants and use it to assign booths. You can review that information and use it when you're assigning your booths. And then the booth map is one that we've had around for a couple of years now and allows you to visually assign booths using your own sitemap, and ZAPP will save that booth information as you're assigning those pins for each participant. It'll also allow you to publicly display your booth map to participants or patrons even. So those are the two tools that make up the booth management add-on. As a whole, the booth management add-on is $100 if you are just running it for one event, or if you need 2 or more events with booth management, then the cost goes down to $50 per event. So I'll explain a little bit more at the end how to request this feature, but you'll see the link on the screen. That link will take you straight to the request form that has information that we gather from you, so you can let us know that you'd like to activate booth management for your event or multiple events if you choose, and that will get you started. So I wanted to provide that ahead of time, but I'll also go over the request process at the end of the webinar. All right, so let's get into booth requests as a demonstration, show you what this is all about. Before we actually get into ZAPP, I'm going to kind of give an overview of how you might be able to use booth requests. These examples are just examples, but you can honestly use booth requests however you see fit after seeing how it works. So you'll want to determine how you want to collect booth requests, but you also want to determine when you want to collect booth requests. This will come into play later on. Maybe you want to determine how many double size corner booths, however many booths you have. Maybe you need to decide how many you need to accommodate. So in that case, you could collect booth requests from artists before they go in and purchase their booth product. That will help you gauge interest and inform applicants whose requests for double or corner booths or whatever ones you have set up have been granted before they go in and purchase that specific size. Another way you can do it is you can incentivize artists to pay for their booth early. So in that case, you could collect booth requests from artists after they purchase their booth. So you would prompt applicants to go in and, make their booth product purchase as soon as they can, in order for them to get in their request for maybe the location of their booth that they want as soon as possible. So if you're giving artists the ability to request where in your event they want to be placed, they've got to go and make that purchase, and that kind of helps guide folks along. You might also have a reason to just collect other information from artists that doesn't really pertain to their booth product per se, but maybe can help you plan your event a little bit more. So if you have any, accessibility related accommodations that you might need or want to anticipate, you could collect booth requests, either before or after they purchase their booth product. Maybe it doesn't matter to you, but the information you collect will be helpful to plan your event layout. So all of these three ways, you have the ability to do this in ZAPP, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. And we're going to use a couple of these examples as we go along in the demonstration. Again, these are just examples, and you can decide how you want to use this feature, but it's going to be pretty interesting and cool for you to see what you can now do in ZAPP. So let's get into it. I'm going to go into the ZAPP dashboard. I'm logged in here as an administrator. And the first thing I'm going to do before I even go to the booth request tool is I'm going to make sure all my products are set up. I'm assuming you would do this ahead of time anyway, but I just want to lay the foundation that it does pertain to booth product purchases. So I'm going to make sure I go to my product editor first and just ensure that all of the products, all the booths are set up in the product editor the way I want them. So you'll see here, this demo event has a lot on here. You might have more or less, but we've got our single booths, double booths, and corner booths. So these are kind of what I'm going to focus on for my demonstration and use in our examples. So just a precursor there to check your product editor. And when you request the booth management add-on feature, the booth management add-on feature will include the booth request tool, and that is in the booth request editor tab. If you don't already have booth management, you'll see that this tab is now available, but it might be grayed out to you, and that's because you don't have it activated for your event. So once it's activated, it'll be available to use. So let's start with setting up the booth request and how we do this. It's pretty easy. The first thing, we have a bunch of different settings, and before I get into the settings, I'm going to mention that I'm going to use this first example first. So I want to determine how many booths in different sizes I might need from our applicants in order to determine how many products I want to offer and to allow applicants to find out if they can get a double or corner booth first before they pay for their booth fee. So let's use that as their example first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the first setting here. I'm going to decide if I want to display my sitemap to artists. I can either, choose yes or no. This sitemap is the one that you enter in your event information tab here. So this sitemap on the booth request page, when artists get to it, will display to artists if you choose yes. This next question is the important one. So who can submit booth requests? The options are artists or vendors who've purchased a booth, artists or vendors who have not yet purchased a booth, or all artists and vendors, no matter if they purchased a booth or not. So these are kind of related to those examples. In this case, because I want to find and collect booth requests before they go in and purchase, I'm going to click artists and vendors who have not purchased a booth. And you'll see this all play out on the artist side as well. Then I'm going to put in a start and end date. So the start date when I want to start collecting booth requests and the end date for when I want to close that out, especially since this will happen before booth products are purchased. You can put this end date before your post-jury fee deadline date. Then the next thing I can do is choose if I want to receive email notifications when requests are submitted. So I can choose, yes or no. And if I choose yes, then I get additional options. I can have the ZAPP system send me one email per day with just a digest of all the booth requests submitted. So that might be helpful if you have a lot of applicants submitting booth requests. Or you can be notified for each request that is submitted. This one might be helpful if you are going to be accepting or denying requests immediately, or hopefully immediately, and then artists need to go in and purchase their booth right after you've notified them, emailed them back. So this email per submission might be helpful if you really need to keep track for each submission. ZAPP will keep information about when artists submit their booth requests, so you don't necessarily need to be notified if you're just going to go into ZAPP and look at the time they submitted their request anyway, but it's an option there for you. Then you can enter the email address for who should be notified, and you can put up to 5 email addresses if you're working collaboratively with your colleagues. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't need a notification. All right, next we have the booth request instructions. So this is where you want to outline some information for artists and, provides additional context or maybe some disclaimers about how they should submit their booth request. I'm going to copy and paste some information here. In this example where we want artists to let me know what size booth they want, I'm going to put in some information like this, basically saying, answer the questions below to determine the accommodations we need to make. I put in a disclaimer, your request will not guarantee your booth size will be available, and you'll be notified if your request is granted. And then I also included a note that we'll discuss in a little bit about artists won't be able to edit their booth request once submitted, at least not yet. So I put that information there to make sure that they have an accurate request. So you might want to put more information for artists. Maybe you have more context that you need to provide. This is just a very basic demonstration of how this can be used. I'm now going to click save because once I start building my questions, I don't want to lose that work. So I'll click save. And then the next thing I'm going to do is build out our questionnaire. So this is very similar to the application editor, where you'll build out questions you want artists to answer. Of course, the exception is that artists will be answering this at a different time than their application. So it's a kind of a whole separate workflow. So I'm going to start building questions. In this scenario, I really just want to get their booth size. So I'm going to create a, we'll do a single select question type. And I'm going to just simply ask them for their booth size choice. This is my internal title. I'm going to go kind of swiftly through this process because it's the same as any questions that you're building out in your application. This is going to be required for everyone, and my question is going to be this: what is your first choice for booth size? And this is just getting their one simple request. You might have more complex questions you need to ask them. Let's say single, double, or corner. So I'm asking artists, which one they want to purchase. I don't need any help information, so I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm just going to click Create Question. So there we go. We just have one question. You might have additional questions that you want to gather from artists, and you can build those out as necessary. Just note that unlike the application editor, we don't yet have conditional logic built into the booth request questions, just because that is this is round one of asking basic questions, but we might introduce conditional logic into our booth request questions later on. So once you've built however many questions you need, you can click on preview and that will show you what it will look like to the artist. So this is the booth request page, and it gives it gives the artist general information about the event. Those are the instructions that we provided here. I opted into previewing the site map, so that's just our little demo booth map here. But then you'll see as well, we have the question we created, so artists can answer the question. And I will show you pretty soon here what it'll look like to the artist side. Kind of the end of the process for booth requests. Once you build this out, artists will be able to submit that booth request in the allotted time and before they purchase their booths. So at this point, let's set the scene a little bit. Let's go to events management, and I'm just going to show you that we have 11 artists in the invited status. So only artists in the invited, accepted, or confirmed status will be able to submit their booth request. So again, in the process, in the application process, we are done with our jury and the artists are invited. Now I can instruct my artists. I can go to events communication. I'm not going to go through this process, but I'm going to let you know that you'll want to send an email to let them know that they can submit their booth request and give them the date that they need to submit their request by. You might also have information about how they should be notified if their request is accepted or denied, and next steps after submitting that. We have a artist help guide that I'm going to put in the chat right now. This link can be shared with artists to give them information about how to submit booth requests, because this is going to be a new feature to artists as well. So they might not be used to this process. We're providing information for artists, but you can also link this help request in your email or help guide to give them those basic instructions. It's right here under submitting booth requests. This is what this looks like. Just very basic information about how to access and submit their booth request. All right, so you've notified artists that they can submit their requests, and let's show you what it looks like to the artist. So I'm going to log in here with my artist account. All right. This artist has been invited to the event, and I have not yet purchased any booth product. And you'll see that we have this new option in the applications page called Add Booth Request. I can also first accept or reject my invitation. So let's go ahead and accept that invitation. And I can now add my booth request. This looks like the preview page as it should, and the artist will just come in here and review everything and make their selection. So let's say I want to request the double booth size. And I'll click Submit and go back to the application page. I can now review my booth request. And of course, like I said before, artists cannot edit their booth request. So we might add that editing feature later. But for now, you'll have to make sure artists are solid with their choice before they submit it. So once they've submitted their booth request, you will now be able to see, again, you might be notified by email, or you can just come into ZAPP and see what they've submitted. So this application will now be in the accepted status. It's this first one here. And I'm going to tell you all the ways that you can find and look at booth requests. So the first thing is by clicking on the application ID number. And now we've just have a new section of the application called booth requests. And you can see the date and time that it was submitted and the answers to the question. So you can review their request for what they asked for. Let's go back to the application list. The other thing you can do with booth requests is filter by booth request status, either submitted or not submitted. So under filter applicants by, I'm going to click booth request status. And I have this new option now. I can show submitted or show not submitted. So let's see, out of everyone, let's get rid of this, all statuses. Out of all statuses, show me who submitted their booth requests, and it'll pull up the list of applications. And if I go into each application ID number, I'll be able to see their booth request answer. You can also edit the table here to show the booth request status column. So you want to make sure you check this box. This allows you to edit what you're viewing on this table here, which is really cool. So, only select the ones that you really need the info for. But we have that booth request status option. So you can click save, and you'll see we have this new column now so that I can see who submitted their booth request. And I can go right to the booth request section of the application if I click that. The other thing you can do is download a CSV file of the booth request answers. So if I, pull up the list of applications, I now have this new option down below, download booth request CSV, and this gives me a spreadsheet of all of the answers to the booth request questionnaire, along with the artist name and timestamp. I recommend using this spreadsheet if you are spending a certain amount of time replying to requests in the order that they were received. So download the spreadsheet, and then you can sort the spreadsheet by date submitted or time submitted, and that will allow you to, respond to those requests as they come in. At this time, we don't have the ability to sort this table or filter the table in the order that it was submitted, but you can individually look at those requests. I will show you today how to view booth requests or booth request status in the booth map tool, which is what we'll get to next. So just be mindful of that as well. And now that we have the booth requests, I can respond to that particular artist, and then they can go in and make their purchase for the correct booth that they were, allowed to purchase, or however you may work that out. So that's the example for how to collect booth requests before artists purchase their booth products. I'm now going to show you a quick version of that same process, but for our second example here, which is collecting booth requests after artists purchase their booth. So this could be in a scenario where you want them to request what location of the booth they want, maybe a specific booth number. You want them to submit that booth request, and in order to do that, they need to pay for their booth first, and that kind of incentivizes artists to purchase booths in as quickly as possible. So back in the booth requests settings, I'm going to go to the event editor again and go back to booth requests. In this scenario, we want to change this setting for who can submit booth requests, artists who purchased a booth. So we need them to purchase a booth before they can submit the request. In this scenario, I'm going to adjust my instructions as well, and I'm going to include similar information, maybe reviewing the sitemap to determine what number they want to request, submitting their choices in order of preference, the disclaimers, and then, a note that they cannot edit their booth request once submitted. So put in some information for them. Now I'm going to delete this old question and build out new ones. So in this case, let me click save first. In this case, I want to ask them to, review the map and tell me their first choice and second choice of their placement. So I'm going to show you as well something different about this question editor in this scenario. I'm going to create a text box question because I'm going to ask them to type in the number. And let's say the title will be booth, location, first choice. Actually, we'll separate it out by single and double booths, or however many we have. I'm going to make this required. And then this one, you'll see we have a new question on the questionnaire editor because I chose that this will happen after artists purchase their booths. So what product does this question apply to? This allows you to say, okay, this artist purchased a single booth. I want to ask them this question. So in this case, I'm going to click single booth. If you're not splitting them up by size, that's fine. You would just create your questions, but ensure that you click all the boxes so that everyone that purchases some booth product will get this question. But I'm going to split it out so that I can have, separate questions for these folks. So I'll click single booth and let's put in our first question, enter one number for your first choice of single booth placement. Let's make sure our character limit is nice and small so people don't put in a bunch of text about why they want that location. I just want the number. I don't want to include help text, so I'll leave that and I'll just click create. I'm now going to repeat the process for the second choice. And I just want one choice, or I want, their top preferences for each one. So single booth, second choice, required, single booth, enter booth number for your second choice of single booth, limit those characters, click create. And then let's just say, I'm not going to build them out, but let's just say the next one would be a double booth. So I would repeat the process and I would choose double booth, asking folks to then put in their first choice for a double booth, create a new question for second choice, so on and so forth. You get the idea. So that's how you would do that. So once you build out all the questions that you need, again, you're ready. You can preview it if you need to, and that will be all set to go. Let's now show you what it will look like on the artist side. Of course, you would now email those artists when you're ready to say you can purchase your booth, but in order to request your desired location, you need to purchase your booth as soon as possible because requests will be filled as in the order you receive them. So let's actually go to a different artist now. I'm going to log out here and I'm going to choose different account. I'm going to show you the process. So again, at the top application here, we see that they've been invited to the event. Now I can accept or reject the invitation. I'll accept. Then I can come and click on purchases. You'll see we don't have the booth request option yet. Click on purchases. These are all the products and we've actually already have it loaded, but I would click on the booth that I want to purchase. So single booth, click next, click next. For the purposes of this webinar, I'm not going to make myself pay for this. So I'm going to add a coupon, click next. And now I'm going to check out and I'm going to quote unquote purchase this single booth. Click submit. We get the receipt. There we go. Now, if I go back to the applications page, you'll see that we now have the option to add booth request, and I can click on that. Again, I would read the instructions. Okay, it says we want me to review the sitemap. Great, I can open the sitemap, determine which booth placement I want. Of course, your booth map would look much more detailed and have more information on it, but this one's just a demo one. Let's say I wanted booth number 8, if this was not a corner booth, it's single booth 8. And so I would enter 8 as my first choice. Maybe I would choose 9 as my second choice, answer those questions, make sure it's correct so I don't have to not have the ability to edit it later, and submit that. And now I can review my choices. Then back on the event management page as an administrator, I can come back. This one will be in the confirmed status because I purchased a booth. And as an administrator, you'll see in the booth requests that those, first choice and second choice are submitted there. So that's the process for collecting booth requests after an artist purchases their booth. Again, these are two very basic examples of how you can use the booth request feature for your advantage. You might have other ways that you want to collect information from artists. Maybe you have different information you want to collect from artists. For example, maybe you have a contract that you want them to sign. And in order to do that, you could just build in a question to the booth requests editor. That would be a file upload question. In the question itself, you could then put a link, a hyperlink to where a contract lives on your website or some online file store. They could then artists could download that contract, that file, sign it, scan it, upload it, and then upload it as an answer to this question in the booth request section. So this allows you to collect additional documents and materials from artists, that is separate from the application process. They've already been invited, so now you need additional info from them, and you can collect that information. So you can really use this however you like, and if you have any specific workflows that work for you, even though they're not typically what I just described, go for it and let us know how it goes, because we're interested to see any use case that we have for this feature. All right, so now what I'm going to do is show you the booth map tool. So as I said, booth management includes two tools, booth requests and booth map. So I'm going to show you the booth map tool. Before I do that, I need to actually change all of our applications in this demo to confirm. So I have actually something to show you in the booth map. Okay, let's skip ahead in time. Now that artists have submitted their booth requests and purchased their booth products, I'm ready to assign the actual booth in ZAPP to the artist. To access booth map, you're going to go to events booth management. We have yet to change this to call just booth map because we originally just created booth management to involve the booth map, but then we added the booth request feature later. So to access booth map, go to booth management in the event tab and you'll see it. If you don't have it activated for your event, you're not going to see this tab. So when it gets activated for you, you'll have access to this page. Let me actually delete this real quick so I can show you the full process start to finish. So this is what you'd see when you first get there. The first thing you want to do is upload your sitemap. So I'm going to click upload booth map, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my screen now, but I will find the file of my sitemap and click upload, and you'll see it upload here. Again, very simple version of a booth map that we created for demo purposes, but you'll probably have a more detailed one. Again, like I said before, I had to move all the applicants to confirmed or accepted. That's because in this next step, artists will only be able to get assigned a booth if they're in the accepted or confirmed status. So make sure that that's the case first before you get in here and start assigning your booths. Or you can do it as artists are purchasing their booth products and assign booths as you go. So now that I have the booth map uploaded, I'm going to click on Assign Booth to start assigning the booth. When I click on this, you'll see my cursor turns into a little cross or plus sign, and I can now place a pin. What I'm going to do is that whenever I click on this map, wherever I click, it's going to assign that pin to that part of the image. So it's not necessarily interactive where I can change the map itself. I'm just kind of placing a pin on this image to assign it to that spot of our map. So let's say booth 5 here. I'm going to click just above it. Now I get to the assign booth page where I'm going to put in the booth number. In this case, it's 5. You might have a more complex naming system. Then I'm going to find the artist I want to assign to this booth. You'll see we have a full list here of artists that are in the accepted or confirmed statuses. But if you have a really long list, you might need to filter or sort in order to find the artist. So I'm going to show you under filter participants, you can filter by status, so whether it's accepted or confirmed. Medium category, so any of the categories you set up for your event, you can filter by those categories. And then booth request status. So now this feature has been updated to include booth request status, and this could be useful if you need them to submit their request before you can assign, and you might want to reference that. Right now you can filter if they've submitted it or not submitted it. So let's say I want to, only assign booths to folks that have submitted their request, and you can find their list here. So let's just say I want to assign this artist. So I'll click on their name. Then I'm going to assign a pin style and a size and a color. So these can just be used however you need to organize your pins. You can assign the meaning to certain shapes and certain colors. The size really kind of just depends on the size of your booth map. Since my booth map is very simple and basic, I have a lot of space, so I can choose a really big pin size. If you have very detailed, a very large map, you might need a really tiny pin to be able to assign, appropriately on the image. Let's just say I want to do, since this is a drawing, I'll give it a little pencil, give it large, and let's make it blue. Then I'll click Save Pin, and you'll see here we've got the pin added to the map. If I click on it, it will show me that information for the artist. It gives me their category, business name, state, and I can click and view their application if I need to. If I want to edit anything about them, maybe edit who is assigned to that booth, I can, or change anything about it, I can do that here and just save it again. This pin will also now appear in a list below here, and it'll give me by booth number who it's assigned to. Again, I can click and open their application. This allows me to then view their booth request again if I need to, and I can edit or delete the pin from here. So you'll just continue that process again. Click Assign Booth first, then click on the map, assign the booth number and the artist, give it the pin color and style, and save that. So just continue on the process. If you need to move the pin, that's one way where we don't yet have the ability for you to drag and drop the pin. So what you'll want to do is click Delete from the list, and then you can reassign the booth to a different one. So we know it's a little bit of a roundabout process, but at the moment, we don't have the ability to drag and drop. So you just want to delete and reassign. The other thing you can do with the booth map, I'll tell you first that the booth number then becomes a part of the artist application, and it can be accessed through ZAPP, whether you're looking at the events management table or on the application. That booth number is assigned because you assigned it on the booth map. It's now assigned in their application on their side. It's assigned on your end, so it's ready to go. You don't have to go in and enter those manually because you're doing it in a visual way. Then what you can do once you've assigned all the artists, or as you're assigning artists, you can display the booth map to participants by checking this box. This then gives you a link down below to click and view the public booth map, which looks like this. So this URL can then be shared in an email to your participants. It can be shared on your website before your event to give patrons a look of where artists will be. And this link is fully interactive. So I can click on the pin and view the artists that will be presenting at the event and where they're going to be. So it's a really neat way to be able to give attendees and patrons and participants an interactive view of where things are and the people that will be there. And there's also the list format. And once I have more booths assigned, people can come here and filter the list by certain medium colors, medium categories, or last name, medium, or booth number. They can sort the list too. So that allows you to publicly display the booth map. One other thing with this is if you go here and click on Edit Booth Details, you can determine whether or not you want to show or hide the artist's business or studio name, their state, and their website. So some of it might not be applicable to you, but some of it might be. You might just want to determine what is available to the public in terms of their location or their website or things like that. But if you do want to show all this info so that folks have access to it, make sure you click Show, and then you can just save that, and that will update the settings for that public-facing booth map. The final thing you can do with Booth Map is download it. So this will download a PDF that you can share. And let's open a new tab. It just kind of looks like this, very basic, and you can't really click on it, but it kind of gives you that color-coded system, once you have all the pins available, and just allows you to save it for future use. All right, so there's other ways you can use booth requests and booth map in tandem with each other. Maybe you want to share it with participants in the booth request questionnaire. Maybe you, like we hyperlinked before, you could hyperlink this booth request or booth map URL in the questionnaire. That will give folks an opportunity to look at what booths are available so they know what they can and cannot request. It might get a little tricky to do in that scenario just because it's going to be on you to manually update the requests that have been accepted or denied, or, keeping an updated list of the available booths. But this is definitely a way where you can use the booth map to visually show what's been chosen and what's not been chosen, and artists can view an updated version of the booth map. You just want to make sure that you include a disclaimer to artists, of course, that, maybe the booth map is going to be updated at a certain time every day, that that you'll go in there and update it, that the booth map might not be reflective of actual availability, but that you're going to do your best to keep on top of it. So that's another way that you can use these two features together to be able to get your artists to sign up for what they need. If you want to request the booth management add-on feature, what you can do is access this by going to the Help tab. That will give you to the Help Center. Then you can either click on Booth Management. This will give you a full tutorial in text of what I covered today. So how to create booth requests, how to adjust your settings. If you scroll further, you'll get to the booth map instructions to find out how to create and display your booth assignments. So it has all this information. But if you were to click to the Help Center and click on the add-ons section at the very bottom, click add-ons, you'll get to our list of add-on features, and you can click sign up, which will take you to the bottom of the page for our form. You just have to review and agree the terms. Let us know which add-on you're interested in this case, booth management. And you'll just give us some basic information about you and your event, when your start date and end date, kind of basic information, how many events you'd like to purchase booth management for, and then submit the form. Then a member of our team will reach out to you to confirm the details and collect your payment. Once payment is received, we'll activate the booth management features for you. So that's the booth request tool and the booth map tool. And that's how you request the booth management add-on. When entering a hyperlink, is there a way to make it open in a new tab upon clicking, or will it take you away from the app in the browser? That's a good question. Let's test it, shall we? I don't know if it's default is my answer to that. So let's take a random link, and I'm going to build out a question. We'll see what happens. Let's say file upload. For the sake of demo, I'm just going to say contract. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to use this from the preview. Download contract here. Let's hyperlink this real quick. Put in this URL. In real scenario, you would then describe what to do next. Great question. All right, let's go to the preview to test out this application. And I'm just going to click it without doing anything extra. Let's see what happens. All right, it looks like it does not open in a new tab. So my suggestion there would be to instruct in the instructions itself for the question to either right-click to open a new tab, or depending on their device, to click, if I'm using a Mac, which I am, command and click, and that would open it up in a new tab. So there's your answer. It's not going to do it automatically unless I don't believe that this had settings for it. Let's see. Actually, ignore what I just said as well, because I went too fast. And if the CK editor here, if you click on the hyperlink, you can set a setting, the target, to open in either a new window, same window, parent window. So if I were to click new window, it'd hopefully update in the new window. And if this doesn't happen, then yeah, it opened up in a new tab when I did that. So there's two answers in one. Are you able to assign a booth to someone who may not have applied via ZAPP? No, so only applicants that have applied through ZAPP are available to be assigned a booth in ZAPP. So it's all just contained. You don't have access to any information, or you cannot add an applicant info for someone that hasn't already applied and done the whole process through ZAPP. This wraps up our webinar about using the booth management add-on in ZAPP. If you have questions specific to your event or feedback for our team, which we're always open to, please contact us at zapphelp@weststaff.org. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you at our next webinar.